Does training to failure matter more when performing only one set?
Just watch me.
Resistance training is one of the best things that you can do for your health and fitness. But let's be honest, not everybody has the time for those 2-hour-long multi-set gym sessions. So what if I told you that there might be a way to make workouts more time efficient without sacrificing your results? Well, stick around and I'll tell you how. So here's the deal. Research shows that single set resistance training, when you perform just one set of exercise per session, can still promote muscle growth and strength. But to maximize those benefits, many people think that you have to push to task failure or when you reach the point where you can't do another rep with good form. It sounds intense, right? Well, it is. And that might be why some people often quit or fail to start resistance training in the first place. In fact, only 28% of people in the US follow the recommended guidelines for strength training twice a week. Lack of time and the discomfort of failure are two big reasons why people opt out. But what if you didn't have to train to failure? Recent studies suggest that stopping your set just short of task failure using something called repetitions in reserve or RIR scale can be just as effective. So let me break it down for you. If you stop your set when you feel like you could only do 1 or 2 more good reps, you're at a 1 to 2 RIR. And guess what? Research on multi-set training shows that this approach leads to similar muscle growth as going all the way to task failure. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Most of the research is carried out on multi-set training. But what about single set workouts? Does stopping at 2 RIRs still deliver results, or is task failure the only way to go? That's exactly what a recent study by Herman and colleagues set out to explore. This group of researchers compared 2 groups of resistance-trained adults having at least 1 year of resistance training experience. One group was tasked with training to failure, while the other was tasked to stop at a 2 RIR. Both groups followed a single set protocol, training with just 1 set per exercise. The researchers wanted to see if the less intense approach could still build strength and muscle effectively. The program included 9 exercises in total, with the specific exercises described in the table you should see on the screen. The participants performed this routine 2 times per week for 8 weeks, with each training session lasting approximately 30 minutes, with a loading scheme for each exercise consisting of 8 to 12 reps with a 2-minute rest between exercises. As for the outcome measures for this study, researchers measured muscle thickness of the elbow flexors, or the biceps, the elbow extensors, which are the triceps, the anterior thigh at 3 different sites along the upper leg, as well as the lateral thigh, also taken at 3 sites along the distance of the upper thigh using the B-mode ultrasound. The researchers also assessed muscle strength using a 1-rep max Smith machine bench press and a 1-rep max Smith machine squat test. Lastly, the researchers assessed local muscular endurance by quantifying the maximum number of repetitions participants were able to perform on the leg extension using a load 60% of their body weight. The outcome measures were assessed around 48 to 72 hours pre and post intervention. So what did they find? Well, a total of 42 individuals completed the study, with 23 individuals in the failure group and 19 in the 2 RIR group. Following the 8-week intervention, the researchers observed small to medium increases in muscle thickness for both groups. According to their statistical analysis, most of the comparisons favored the group that trained to task failure over the group that trained with a 2 RIR. However, the actual differences were not meaningfully different according to their analysis. Some exceptions included the superior growth of the anterior thigh at both the 50 and 70% sites for the group that trained to failure versus the 2 IR group. Other sites measured, such as the biceps and the triceps, as well as the lateral thigh, were not different between both groups. Now, when it comes to muscular strength, both groups achieved significant increases in 1-rep max strength for the Smith machine bench press and the squat test, but there were no statistical differences between the groups. Similarly, both the groups observed significant improvements in their local muscular endurance test, with no difference between each group. So what does this data mean, and what are my practical takeaways? After taking in all of this information, many of you are probably wondering a few things. Does this mean that I have to train to failure, or is training with 2 reps in reserve sufficient to optimize muscle growth? Well, according to this study, it seems as though there is really no difference between training to failure or training 2 reps in reserve when it comes to muscle growth, strength, and local muscular endurance. There were a few exceptions for the anterior thigh muscle. However, these differences were marginal and should not be weighed too heavily with this interpretation. Now, where it gets particularly interesting is the change scores observed from performing just 1 set taken close to or to task failure. These findings indicate robust muscle growth with a 0.37 centimeter increase observed at the mid-quad at the 50% site. Comparing these results with other studies of similar duration, such as those by Amathallingham and colleagues and Alb and colleagues, highlight some contrast despite employing significantly higher weekly set volumes, 24 sets per week to be exact. These studies reported muscle thickness increases of only 0.11 centimeters and 0.15 centimeters respectively. That being said, I have a few questions regarding this paper. Are the differences in measurement techniques between labs significant enough to explain the drastic variation in observed results? Would incorporating more control groups help us better understand and account for measurement errors? Additionally, could performing just 1 set close to or at failure be inherently more effective than traditional multi-set protocols? Well, I don't know that science has a clear set of answers for these questions. Now, we do have to be careful when comparing muscle growth across different studies. However, it could be argued that muscle growth observed by Herman and colleagues is objectively robust. This would mean that 1 single set per exercise was not only effective in trained individuals, but impressive. So what are my key takeaways? Well, this study highlights an interesting perspective for individuals who may struggle with time constraints or just prefer lower training volume protocols. The findings indicate that single set protocols performed close to or at task failure can stimulate significant muscular adaptations, even among trained individuals. This study may also provide some evidence that training close to failure may be more important if you are only performing 1 single set per exercise. This protocol also demonstrates that 2 weekly sessions equating to 1 hour of gym time per week can yield robust hypertrophy outcomes, which may appeal to individuals who find traditional multi-set high-volume training routines too time-intensive or just daunting. Lastly, we do need to acknowledge these contrasting growth findings and view these in the context of other studies, such as those by Amathallingham and colleagues and Alb and colleagues. It is my opinion that we need to exercise some amount of caution when interpreting these robust growth responses to a single set protocol, given that much higher weekly volumes of around 24 sets per week have not observed growth results comparable to these. Moreover, while this single set protocol has been shown to be effective at achieving muscle growth, this protocol may not represent the ceiling for maximizing muscle growth, as this study design does not compare this directly to higher volume training over the longer term. So that's it, folks. Thank you so much for watching. And if you found this video informative, make sure that you like this post, subscribe to my channel for more evidence-based content. And if you have any questions about muscle growth and training, feel free to leave me a comment below.